Welcome back to another episode of Toxic Mold Sucks. Today we're doing an expert episode. I'm Elizabeth Kripe, the co-founder and executive director of Malachi's Message. Co-hosting today with me is Emily Rochelle. She is our board director and also the co-founder of Malachi's Message. We are so excited. I can honestly say we are so excited to have today's guest on with us. We get to talk and have a conversation with Dr. Jill Crista. Dr. Crista earned her Naturopathic Doctor Degree with honors from the National University of Naturopathic Medicine. She also completed the physician training program with the International Lyme and Associated Disease Society. She was the owner, director, and practicing member of 2 integrative clinics. That is where she witnessed the efficacy and synergy of a team approach to patient care. She serves on the board of the Wisconsin Naturopathic Doctors Association and was president for 6 years. She also worked on the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians Committee, where she gained experience in seeking licensure of naturopathic doctors in Wisconsin and increasing access to naturopathic healthcare nationally. So basically, she is incredibly intelligent. And when you talk to her and if you get to know people that know her, she just cares. She has such a heart for people and for ensuring that they heal where they're at and that they're able to have a high quality of life. Dr. Crista, we're so excited. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's so inspiring, the mission that you're on. I'm really pleased. Thank you.
Dr. Crista, your expertise and field of interest are vast. Today, we hope to get your insight into 2 main areas. The first being a really big topic that we get a lot that shows up on Malachi's Message platform, as well as many mold groups, because unfortunately, a lot of people can't leave their environment. So the question to you is, if a person can't leave their environment, what can they do?
They can do so much, and they should do so much. So I hear the question a lot, and on mold forums and on social media, and I will see comments where people say, well, don't bother doing anything until you get out. And I think that is a really dangerous thought process, because we know from animal studies that there are things that you can do that protect you while you're being exposed to mold, so that when you do get out, you can have a faster recovery. You don't have so many colonization issues. So yeah, there are so many things that you can do while you're still being exposed. And I try to use the word still rather than stuck purposefully. You're still in mold, you're not stuck in mold, because there are always choices. There are always options. They may take a little while, but these are things that you can do while you're still in your moldy situation. The number one is air filtration. So number one is actually, yes, do something. Yes, there are things that you can do. But so filtering your air, while filtration is not remediation, it still knocks down the burden, not just of the spores and the spore fragments, but also the mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the part for my patient base that make the majority of the symptoms, and they're ultra, ultra small. So you want to make sure you're using an air filter that will clean down to that level. And one of my favorites is called Intellipure. There are others. There's Austin Air, there's IQ Air, there's, I'm probably forgetting Air Doctor, that they do clear a lot of particulate. What's different about Intellipure is that they zap the filter, because the filter itself can become a petri dish. So we don't want any spores that are trapped there to be fed by the humid air going by there and then start to grow on that filter. Now your filter becomes part of your sick building. So what they do is they zap the filter so that nothing can grow there while it's being trapped there. So that's my favorite for people that are still in mold. And of course, there are tons of dietary things that you can do. You can either be feeding the mold, or you can be helping to starve it out and not allow it to move into you. That's the problem, is that mold kind of wants to come on in and compost you. So it'll move into your sinuses, your gut lining, your lungs. And so we want to do things that are going to be dietarily preventing that from happening as much as possible. Everyday herbs and spices that we use are quite powerful. Things like garlic, cinnamon, cloves, these are bay leaves. I could go on and on. Sage, rosemary, thyme. If you add extra of those things to your cooking, you're actually giving yourself a gentle antifungal treatment, and not so much that's one of the things not to do while you're still in mold, is, if possible, not to start on a big antifungal, kill the mold, knock it back plan. because that mold does get mean when it knows you're coming for it. So the nice thing about the dietary things is you can be sneaking up on it. It can say, oh, what is that? Oh, that's oregano. I've seen that before. Okay, I don't have to get worried. But if you have the oregano in a high enough amount, or the thyme, or the sage, or the cinnamon, or the garlic, it will actually start to impede that mold's ability to make babies. And that's what we want to do. We want to knock it out.
Wow.
I have tons of advice. I could go on and on. So let me know.
That is actually one of our questions we were going to ask you in a second, just what types of food you would recommend a person stay away from, and what types of food you would recommend a person choose.
Yeah, so the foods to stay away from are the things that are mold, so in the fungus family. Other colleagues of mine don't follow that same pathway, but for me, I learned that from my patient base. So we all see kind of different people are attracted to different doctors, but in my patient base, eating mushrooms, eating yeast, yeasted breads, yeasted goodies, nutritional yeast on popcorn. That's a very popular hippie thing to do. Kombucha, anything fermented. Those are things that actually flared my patients. They ended up having more neurological symptoms, more sweet cravings, more gut disruption when they were eating things that are actually in the fungus family. The other things to avoid are things that allow fungal overgrowth, and that's pretty much sweets. So if you can Google any diet that says, what's a candida diet, anti-candida diet, that's probably the best diet to go on when you're still in mold, because it will be reducing the things that have a very high sugar content. So no juices. If you're going to have fruit, have the whole fruit. Don't just drink apple juice, have an apple, because that will reduce the sugars. No sugar. I do allow honey because honey has a lot of the antifungal aspects of it with propolis and things like that. So a little bit of honey to sweeten something, so you can, especially if you're a parent and you're trying to get something down a kid, and that, if they could drink this tea that you made for them with a little bit of sage and a little bit of thyme and maybe a little bit of cinnamon, you have to sweeten it with a little honey, no problem with that. But real sweets, sugar, baked goods, those kind of things, then we take those out, because it can feed the fungus. It can feed any amount that either has moved into your body or the amounts that are already there. Like candida is all of us have it. Even healthy people have a little bit, but it'll start to overgrow when you're in a moldy environment. And the third category would be things that are contaminated with mycotoxins, typically contaminated. So that's going to be things in the grain family. So some people feel better going on a grain-free diet when they're still in mold, because that's reducing their mycotoxin exposure. If you drink coffee, making sure to use coffee that's mycotoxin-free, like Bulletproof or Purity. Those are two brands that test independently for mycotoxins. If you're a tea drinker, using your green tea that tests for these as well, which is traditional medicinals. So there are different things. Those are kind of the no-nos. Is it fungus? So mushrooms, yeast. Does it grow fungus? Sweets. And is it mycotoxin contaminated, which is typically going to be more in the grain family. Corn as well is very, not organic corn, but commercially grown corn is very high in it. Peanuts can be quite high in mycotoxins. Yeah.
So stay away from those things. If you're still in mold and you're trying to sort a little bit and continue to have a decent quality of life, stay away from those three categories.
Right. Yeah. Those are three categories to kind of keep an eye on. Yeah. And a mouth off.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
I love what you said earlier, though, when you said that you're still in mold, not stuck in mold. I love that, because so many of us, when we're going through it, we just feel like we're just stuck in it. And I think that's where the question comes from a lot of people on like, which foods should I eat? Shouldn't I eat? What can I do? With like the mindset that I can't do anything. There's mold everywhere. I'm just stuck here. So until I can get out, like this is it. Like I'm just done for. And I love that you say you're still in mold, because there's hope at the end of that, right? Like, no, you're in it, but this is not the end. So what are some other things you would recommend to people? The air purifier is amazing, because that's the first thing you see pop up everywhere. And I love the recommendations, because again, when we talked before this call, so many people have opinions. Yes. And it's great, because that's how we learn, right? We've got to hear other people's opinions and test what they said. But it's really nice to hear from somebody that works with this on literally a daily basis to go, these are the things that I've seen that have really helped my patients. So what are some other things that you would recommend beyond the air purifiers and the whatnot too? I love that food. We're actually going to make sure we have that up with this video. But what are some other things you would recommend to people that agree with you, that they feel they're still in mold, but not stuck in mold?
Yes. Words have power. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Part of the air side. So if anyone wants to, I have a video about how to choose an air filter and why I chose the Intellipure. And I actually, the owner of the company has like this fancy laser particle counter. And then I had my particle counter, which is not fancy laser particle counter, but we test the machines. And in the Intellipure, there's zero particulate coming out of the machine. So once it goes into the magical machine, it's like out of Dr. Seuss, the star on and star off machine. It's like something happens and the particles just get grabbed by that machine. So I test in that, and you can see in the video. So it's not opinion, it's tested fact that there's zero particles coming out. And the particulate, this ultra fine particulate, that's what carries the mycotoxins around in the air. So if you can knock down your particulate count, I call it in my book, dust with gusto, become a dust fiend. Like, turn on good music, everybody get the gloves on, put your kids in sock feet, and like everybody get busy with dusting and make it your new favorite family thing to do, dust and dance or whatever you want to call it. Because if you can get the dust level down, you're getting your toxic load down. So you can be still in mold and be healthier if you're managing your particulate count. Yeah. So other ideas too is using essential oils. What I love about essential oils, and you can do them in the room, is that they have a special antifungal effect where I had said earlier, mold gets mean. When it knows you're coming for it, it will start to increase its production of mycotoxins. It's just, it's a very, very smart creature. So what you can use is essential oils, and that shuts down the mycotoxin formation from the mold. So it could still be sitting there if you didn't get it dusted, or if it is, behind your bathtub and it's sending mycotoxins through, those essential oils are combating that mycotoxin production. So it helps keep the area dormant until you can get the remediation done or until you can get out of that house. Not everybody tolerates essential oils. Some people are really sensitive to the aldehydes in essential oils, but a little bit goes a long way. So if it is your bathroom and you guys have not using the bathroom because it's the sick area, or your basement and you're not using it, seal off all the ducts, seal the room, and every once in a while take an essential oil diffuser, either by the old school, a closed mouth jar and the little sticks, that stick up. They sell those at Target, you can use that. Or put essential oils on cotton balls. And then I saturate cotton balls by about 10 to 20 drops per cotton ball and put it into the area that's sick, and then seal it all off, seal off any connections and ducts. And you've just created kind of a biostasis area so that you can keep yourself well-er while you're still in mold. So that's a little environmental thing you can do as well.
What about the beds? I'm curious, what do you tell patients about their beds? Is there anything that they can do to their beds while they're still in mold to kind of help prevent or lower that exposure that they could be getting while they're sleeping?
Yeah, same thing. I just use the cotton ball method with the essential oils, and they will stain. So people need to know they do leave like an oil stain, but it's like sacrifice a pillowcase and, big deal. So you can saturate those cotton balls and then put them into pillowcases for kids, all four corners, for your own bed, and then under sheets at the corners, just to try to keep the area in a biostasis. It won't necessarily save your mattress. If it's contaminated, it's contaminated, and you'll probably have to get a new one. And we do sweat quite a bit of mycotoxins as we sleep. So, mattresses are a common thing to have to say goodbye to when you can get out of the mold. But in the meantime, those are little things that you could be doing.
Do you have a recommendation? Does it matter? Because I know this is something I would ask. Does it matter not which brand, but which type of essential oil? So are you using like a thyme, a lavender? Does it matter which not flavor,
Yes.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah. So there are essential oils that have been well tested in studies. So again, we're going back to science. Thyme is one of the most powerful. Cedar, pine, anything in that evergreen family would work. There's one called Ajwain, which is going to be more familiar to your listeners in the Middle East. It's kind of a mix of basil and cardamom and anise. It's got this beautiful smell. That one is nice for nighttime for the bed because it smells so good. Also frankincense, myrrh, those are getting a little more on the expensive side, but good old thyme is really cheap and very affordable to buy in bulk, so that you can be continuously retreating. These essential oils will volatilize off, so you do have to retreat and retreat and retreat, and to retreat the mold.
Nice.
Yeah.
When it comes to frankincense, I learned about frankincense through our mold journey when my son was diagnosed with autism, and I was talking to some other mothers of autistic children. And one thing that was pretty popular was frankincense being put or applied on the back of the brainstem to reduce inflammation. Have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's more going with the aromatherapy techniques. And there's a lot of science behind aromatherapy. Boswellia or frankincense, it's the same. It depends on whether you're using the Latin or not, but a lot of people use Boswellia for anti-inflammatory purposes. And so using frankincense, so the same plant in the essential oil, where our skin is very, very absorbable. So we're like skin sponges. And that's the dangerous thing about being still in mold, is that now your skin can take that in the more that you're exposed to it. So that's why I'm a big dust with gusto person. But yeah, I've heard of it. I have some patients where they feel like it make a difference, and some where they said, yeah, I don't know that it's really making a difference. So it just depends on your child.
Thank you for covering that.
Yeah.
I was curious.
Yeah.
My kids are going to love the dust with gusto. They already like to slide around in their socks. So now I can just add it to their chore list, and we're going to get both covered there. Yeah,
that's right. Turn on the music, get them, if kids get to choose the tunes, that makes all the difference in the world. And then you get buy-in. And I have a cleaning formula, a DIY cleaning formula on my website. If you just page down the footer, it's under handouts, and it teaches you how to make your own vinegar-based essential oil cleaning solution. And you can just use it on all surfaces. And yeah. And the gloves are super fun. Like if you can get those dusting gloves with the microfiber stuff, and then they can walk around feeling like a Muppet, and so yeah, it's make it a game. That's our parenting rule 101 is if it's fun, it gets done.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. A lot of Encanto soundtracks in my future. I already foresee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, yay.
In regards to nutrition, so we kind of talked about some of the things that we need to stay away from, which honestly, I wish I had known when we were in mold, because I'm looking at the list you created, and I feel like so many of those things we thought were just healthy at the time because we didn't know better, right? So we were going to those things, and now I'm looking back and going, this is why my doctor right away said we've got to clean up your gut before we can do anything else. And I'm going, oh, this is making more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, kombucha is supposed to be good for your gut, right? So people say, oh, I'm having gut problems, I'll go have some kombucha. And the yeast is like, thank you. So it actually makes you crave some of those things. So you are, normally our cravings are teaching us about what we need nutritionally. And you'll see this in kids. They go on a binger of tangerines. They'll eat a whole bag of tangerines in 2 days. And you're like, what just happened to my child? That was them listening to their body. But when you're in mold will start to hijack your mind, and it will start to make you want certain things that are going to help perpetuate its survival. So you really have to start questioning your own mind and cravings when you're in mold.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, I remember when we were in mold, and I got onto my husband because I was like, stop eating so much candy. He doesn't eat candy, but all of a sudden he was just craving it. And then I found myself craving it too. And then obviously we found out that mold was causing us to crave this.
Yes. Yeah. You got it.
So which foods would you recommend for people that are now hearing this and going, man, okay, I know the things I shouldn't be going near.
Right.
What are some of the things you would recommend that people kind of are drawn to more, or they should train themselves to be drawn to until they can get out of mold?
Good question. I always love to say what you can do, not just what you can't do.
Yes.
Yeah. And some people are listening to that list of the no-nos and they're like, what is there to eat? I don't even know, like there's nothing else.
Grass outside.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a ton you can eat. A lot of people don't get enough protein. And that's both vegetarian and carnivores. We just don't get enough protein, and mold mycotoxins get in the way of protein synthesis. So people in mold get very low on their protein, their body proteins, their muscles, and their protein intake. And that's what drives our immune system. So focusing on, if you are a meat eater, making sure you're getting enough and good quality meats. And you'll notice in kids, they may start refusing meat because of that whole protein synthesis inhibition thing that's happening. Their guts become inflamed. So you might have to grind the meat. So a hamburger is going to be easier tolerated, or hamburger meat, easier tolerated than a steak for a kid. You might have to shred the chicken if you bake it and not just cut it up and do chicken chunks, So there are different ways that you can start the digestive process for the protein, because a lot of kids will start refusing because it's just too much work because they're fatigued. I mean, one of the most common symptoms of mold toxicity is fatigue. And I'm sure all of you listening, I'm not telling you anything you didn't know, but that, digestion takes work as well. So you can start by grinding it or pureeing. If you make chicken soup, puree the soup, or at least puree the chicken, and that will help with starting the digestive process. If you're vegetarian, things like dal, and if you, instead of eating nuts, actually making the nut butter is a lot easier for people who are still in mold to tolerate, because the nuts take work to digest. So you're not going to get as much protein content out of that if you have to be the one chewing and digesting it, because you're exhausted. So let a grinder do that for you and eat it as tahini instead of sesame seeds. I usually recommend my patients add, of all my patients actually, because nobody gets enough protein these days, plant-based protein. I have everybody add seeds, and particularly seeds, but some nuts to their meals. So often I'm recommending pepitas or pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, pine nuts, anything that you're cooking, add those as an accent because it'll boost your good fats and your protein. Good fats are the other thing that protect you from mold, and that's in animal studies. DHA has been shown to protect the brain and protect the cells from mold and mycotoxin exposure. So those could be some easy things like eating fish. You can tolerate it, or if you like it. People with histamine issues might have a little bit of trouble with. If you don't tolerate that, you can take a non-fish DHA supplement, like algae. There are plenty of algae. Oh, am I unstable here? Did I just freeze? I just got a little
message for a second.
Okay. Yeah, I just got a little message. When I get excited, my computer is just like, whoa, too much. And the other thing is things that help you detoxify, because you are still in mold, you're being exposed to mold and mycotoxins. And even if the mold is now dead, which the only dead mold is a broken up mold. If it's a full spore, it's dormant, but that means it was living and it was excreting mycotoxins, and that's going to be in your porous things in your home, porous furniture, mattresses, carpets, those sorts of things. So you want to be actively detoxifying that with food, and that won't alarm the mold. It won't stimulate too much detoxification for your body that's just trying to deal with day-to-day accumulation of these toxins. So things like broccoli sprouts. If kids don't like broccoli or broccoli sprouts, you can actually make broccoli sprout tea. So you just make it like you're going to make a green tea. You just take a tablespoon of the broccoli sprouts and put it in hot water, let it steep, and then have them drink the tea. And you can add a little honey and get it down. So there's different ways to get this into kids who are even really picky eaters. Anything in that Brassicaceae family, so Brussels sprouts, broccoli, any of the good greens, so kale, mustard greens, collard greens, all of those greens. And always bitter greens, bitter foods, even finishing a meal with a little bit of bitter chocolate that's unsweetened or, only mildly sweetened, like at 80%, bitter coffee, bitter green tea. those are things that can help with that gentle detoxification. And if you have sweet cravings, you can go for beets. Beets are wonderful. If you roast them, it candies them. You can also do that with carrots to get carrots into kids. You can be like, hey, let's roast them, because it does create a little bit of a candied outer layer, and then you can just eat that right out of the pan. Man, roasted beets are amazing.
Are you talking about red beets?
Yes.
So I have a quick story. I gave red beets to my son, Sebastian. That was part of his nutrition when we were detoxing him. And obviously he was very young, and his stools always told me a story, like if there was inflammation and stuff. But after I gave him beets, the next day it was red, and I thought it was blood.
Yes, that's a good point. That is a very good point. Yes. And sometimes people will, depending on your genetics, you can also pee red after you've had beets, and that really freaks people out. So yeah, they will exit the same color they came in, whatever you didn't digest. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people with mold also have urinary frequency. And that's part of, like, ochratoxin is one of the mycotoxins that's super hard on the kidneys. So having things like flat leaf parsley and celery and cucumbers helps to provide an electrolyte balance that will keep some of that hydration in the body and also protect the kidneys. And I say flat leaf parsley on purpose because that is one of the few that's low in oxalates. So that's one of the problems. Some people with yeast overgrowth, they end up with oxalate issues. So things like beets and things like, what am I thinking? Chard is a little hard for them. They actually get joint pain.
There we go.
You
got excited again.
I know I do. When I talk about food, yeah.
You froze right when you were saying joint pain.
Oh yeah, from oxalates. So, just really pay attention. If you're eating something and you don't feel good afterwards, there's information there for you. But vegetables. Veggies will get you out of this.
Would you recommend for people to kind of keep a diary, like when they're going through the detox, or just at all, just their symptoms and what they're eating and so forth,
Sure.
through their journey?
Yeah, there are some great symptom and diet tracker apps that are just make it really easy. And especially if you are exhausted and you're still in mold and you have to make all these decisions, having to track something like that can feel really overwhelming because you're already overwhelmed. So you're just like, today we're going to be going to the drive-thru because this is just no one's eating unless this happens, So try, if you're in that situation, go through something that is going to be a little more healthy, like a Panera, if you're going to do a drive-thru. But the tracking really gives you great information. My son had histamine issues and he would feel bad every time we would have leftovers. I'm like, you're just making that up, and then I learned about leftovers have more histamine and I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. He was telling me about that. So yeah, your body is an amazing, wise, informative for you.
I'm just curious, because I know one of the issues we have too when you talk to people is that their children, because they're so close to the ground, they see a lot of issues come, and that's one of their main concerns. We're still in mold, but my child is still little, still bitty, right? Still like in a rented apartment or house where there's carpet everywhere. Mm-hmm. What are some things you would recommend for them as they're trying to just continue to go, but we know that things are settling into the carpet? What are some things they can do?
Yes. So particulate, getting a vacuum that will be down to the HEPA level. And there's a good review of the different vacuums on airinspector.com. Martine Davis, she's who taught me everything I know. She's an inspector. She's been doing it for years. She's my go-to in my area. I'm very, very lucky. And I did, in the beginning, when I was learning a lot, I would go to all of her inspections and the remediations and visit that with patients so I could learn. And what I learned is doctors shouldn't be navigating this. By the way, guys, if your doctor is trying to navigate your home inspection, they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. It's too difficult. Yeah. So listen to the podcast these guys did with Michael Rubino. That was a very informative podcast. And he has a great book, The Mold Medic. So for babies, it's really, really important to get enough of those good fats. DHA, the fish oil, avocados, walnuts, walnut oil, all of those good fats. Their brains are still leaky. Their brains are still a little permeable compared to an adult, which means these mycotoxins, even the ones that can't naturally get through the blood-brain barrier, which there are a couple, all of them will then get through their blood-brain barrier because they have very leaky brains, or, open. They're learning. So the body is bringing lots of blood flow up there, and we don't want to have mycotoxins be getting into the brain. That's how we end up with a PANDAS or PAMS kid. So DHA, fish oil. My favorite is DHA Junior by Nordic Naturals. You can get it at a health food store. It's like strawberry flavored and goes down pretty easily. Your face just lit up.
Well, I literally, before we did this, I moved our supplement container over for my kids, and they just got theirs. Their favorite is a strawberry flavor of that, but that's what they take. It. It's the one that my youngest can actually, she'll eat it and be like, this isn't horrible, Mom. I can actually take this.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, that one has been a lifesaver for getting her to take her fish oil.
Yeah. And there's a lot of gummies and things like that. That does not have enough fish oil in it to make a difference. You're just getting more sugar and you're feeding the mold. So you're better off getting a full tablespoon of the good stuff into your kid and follow it with one fruit snack than to have them eat like 12 gummies to try to get up to that level. If you look at the sugar content of both of those things, you're much better off doing a chaser of a bribe than trying to do just more of junk. Spoken from one mom to another. Yeah. So for babies, the other thing is quercetin and milk thistle and green tea. All of those four things. So DHA, quercetin, milk thistle, and green tea have all been shown in studies to be pre-protective. Those are all the things I nag the remediators in my area to be taking, because they protect the cells, they protect the brain, they protect the liver, they protect the kidneys, so that you are keeping yourself as well as possible despite your exposure.
I was just thinking when you were saying avocado, when we were still in mold, our youngest, she just craved it. Like we would go to the store and she would always just want an avocado, and she would just eat an avocado. And looking back now, going, like you just said, they tell you with what they're craving. And she was telling us that before we even knew what was going on. Still to this day, now she loves avocado, but it was such like an insatiable, like she needed it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we just thought it was a quirk. Like, oh, she really likes avocados. Now we look back and go,
cute.
Oh, yeah. No, like she needed, her body was telling her what she needed. I love,
Yeah.
Dr. Crista, would you recommend, or would this be too much on somebody's body to do a detox bath while they're still in mold?
That's a great question. I get that question a lot. So it depends on the person, but to do something where you're detoxifying in a gentle way has been pretty beneficial for my patients, but it can be taken too far. And then the body says, oh, we're in detox mode. And it starts dumping a bunch of the toxins you have stored at the same time as your body's trying to deal with the stuff it's dealing with on a daily basis. So we want to find that sweet spot of cleaning out the accumulation you got from the week of, living still in mold. And that could be done with a detox bath. That could be done with a kind of lower temperature sauna. If you have access to that, like a 125 degree far infrared sauna. Don't stay in too long. We don't want to kick that switch that says, okay, detox, go. Because it's asking way too much of your detox organs. And then you end up with those organs struggling. So sometimes even a coffee enema, doing that once every 2 weeks, if you're a grown up and you can handle that, that can be something that can keep the detoxification going. But typically I'm using things that are more providing the nourishment to your body so that it can make the detox happen. When we do a sauna, we aren't technically sweating out the toxins. What you're doing is you're a radiator effect. So we're bringing blood flow out to the surface to cool the body. And then when you get out of the sauna, it goes back into the core. And that's where your organs of detoxification are doing the filtration. So anybody's like, oh, I sweat out all my toxins. And I'm like, well, kind of your liver and kidney just sweat it out. You sweat something, but the majority ends up back in those organs of detoxification. Whereas using a mud bath there are particular muds called peloids that will have a drawing effect, and it will draw those out of your skin layer. Our skin is a sponge. We talked about that earlier with the frankincense. So you can, bathe your kids in dirty water. And it's kind of fun. Again, it's like, it's a mud bath. And they get in when you use these peloids. If you fill a bathtub, you can't see through the water. It's just like black water or brown water. And that will actually help them detoxify. So they can be playing in the dirty water, and detoxifying out through their skin. And then you do a real bath or a real shower after that. And that can help detox in a gentle way that won't trip that trigger. Yeah. That's why I like milk thistle as well, because it's protective. It also helps detoxify, but it's not like a hardcore detox. It doesn't tell the body it's go time. It just helps with the daily accumulations.
I'm like absorbing all of this.
I know. I'm amazed at all the good information.
I know it's a little much. I will try to, yeah. Oh well. No, you can always rewatch.
It is so good though, because these are all, I'm thinking, that's why I stopped for a minute, because I was thinking back to when we were in mold and the hours, I was still in mold brain, and the hours I spent trying to find information online on when you should detox, if you should detox, how you should detox. Well, I'm still very sick and my children are still very sick. If somebody had done what you're doing right now and just laid out the basics for me, that would have been huge, because then I still, right, like it's a positive thing. You can feel like you're at least moving forward. You're moving in a forward direction. You're not just sitting still. So it's a lot of information, but it's all very useful information that people can go do. That's also not going to, again, financially drain them. Some of these things you can get milk thistle, and it's not incredibly expensive. My kids take that as a tea still. Yeah. And it, you know what I mean? So it's a lot, but it's very useful. Very useful.
I have a question. I just thought of a question, because this came up last week with one of our clients who was just about to have twins, and she's in mold. And so she had a question in regards to, how do I know my breast milk is safe? Should I even breastfeed?
This is a great question. This comes up in Lyme as well. The benefits outweigh the risks, but mom can work on taking phosphatidylcholine and then insoluble fiber. So the phosphatidylcholine and a bitter at the same time will stimulate the bile, and then insoluble fiber will grab that bile so that she doesn't recycle the toxin back in. And then breast milk does have mycotoxins, but it has other things, BPAs and things we don't even want to know about, So, but the benefits of breastfeeding always outweigh the risks of whatever toxin that a child is getting. Yeah. So, but she can bind with insoluble fiber, and then it will reduce her body burden.
Awesome. Thank you.
So good. It's just so good. I love this. I'm going to go back and listen to this a few more times.
Yeah.
For those of you though that are listening or watching, if you haven't checked out Dr. Crista's website, it's amazing. Actually, after we interviewed Dr. Casey, I spent days just kind of perusing and looking through the information and the courses. And I know you have a lot on Pans Pandas for our Pandas parents out there. You've got a mini course, you've got shorter, right? I saw that it's been reoriented where there are shorter little clips.
Oh yeah, I have what they're called Pandas shorts. So it's just one topic, 5 minutes or less for, busy, stressed out parents. So and then I have an upcoming book on pandas and pans called A Light in the Dark for Pandas and Pans. And that'll be out late summer. The course it's a fundamentals course. It just lays out kind of the basic things you can be doing in addition to what your doctor is doing with you.
Which is incredible. And it's something you can watch when you have the time. It's not something super, I love that. And she go for it. I was going to say, if people haven't read your book, Break the Mold, they should.
Thank you. I tried to make it very actionable. So it has doses, it has, if you're taking a certain supplement, what's a caution. And then I also have a course called 9 Things to Know When You're Still in Mold. And that's kind of what we've been talking through. One of the things I want to make sure to point out is that detox thing that we were talking about, One supplement that I have seen make people way worse while they're still in mold is glutathione. And that's typically something that we use to heal someone. So you'll see a lot of glutathione around, like those of us docs who are treating, we're always talking about glutathione, glutathione, glutathione. When you're still in mold, that's asking your body to go into a massive detox. And that has really flared. I learned that one the hard way. And so that went on my no-no list. Yeah. So, more than a once weekly sauna or mud bath or lymphatic massage or whatever your body detox thing is, or more than 200 milligrams of glutathione in a day. Those are things that my strong, like bull patients can handle, but not the.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
Keepers.
That's okay.
I'm sorry about that. They are doing work down my street. So I'm wondering if they're, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So who do you, just so people know if they're hearing this and go, well, who does Dr. Crista see? Does she take on new patients? What does her clientele look like? Could you give us a little bit of input on that?
Sure. So I got onto the mission. You're on your mission. My mission is to train more doctors. So I stopped taking new patients so that I could train docs. And so that's really where my focus is. So no, I'm not taking new patients, but I get contacted all the time. And so I tried to figure out something that it could be so you can get my perspective at least. And so I created a membership so people can check that out on the website as well. And that's a way you can pick my brain 2 times a month at Q&As. We do just all the members there. You can submit your question and I just fire away, and you have access to the whole library of Q&As for 2 years and counting. And then we have something that I just love. It's called our member shares. 2 times a month, the members come. I'm there, but I'm just kind of there to be part of it. And everybody shares what's working for them and what hasn't worked, or doctors that are working for them, or remediators that are working for them. So it's this beautiful community of people who know what you're going through and are there to support you and also to get support. So it's lovely. Yeah. And the forum is kind of like Facebook. It has a feed and you can have discussions and things, but it's all locked down private so that, a lot of people have different issues with the mold. Maybe it's their employer, maybe it's their home and they don't want, people in their life to know they have mold. And so there's just a lot of stuff that can come along with mold. So it is a private forum rather than having a Facebook group. So it's all within there. Yeah. So that's how people can work with me. It's not the same, I know, as being a patient, but hopefully we'll have a lot more docs who know what to do.
I love your mission though. My husband and I were talking yesterday. We were really frustrated with the conversation we had with a family member about mold. And he goes, but you have to remember, if the doctors don't know, they just don't know. Mm-hmm. It's like if they're being trained up in like Western medicine and they just haven't been taught about it and they just don't know, they just don't know. I was like, I'm so glad somebody like Dr. Crista exists that is still trying to make that an awareness issue on that platform. So doctors can know, and they can know, so they know what they're treating people for, because you can't ask, a football player to all of a sudden become a professional soccer player just because they're in the arena of sports, and as professional athletes, that doesn't work. So I think your mission is so important because it's going to create a long-term effect that's going to help thousands upon thousands of people down the road. So thank you so much for what you're doing. It's incredible.
That's the goal. We'll see how well I do. It's hard in medicine because mold illness really needs a definition upgrade badly. That's what I'm trying to do, is upgrade the definition, but you can't purposefully expose someone to a known carcinogen, mycotoxins, to figure out what works to make them feel better. So the kickback I always get from medical doctors is, show me the randomized controlled clinical trials. We can't do that. In medical ethics, we can't do that. So we are left with animal studies, which there are many, 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 many. And so we can use those animal studies to do our own clinical translational medicine. So usually it goes from animal study to a translational study to clinical trials, starting with safety, then dosing, and then results, so they're just trying to figure it out. We can't do that whole thing when we're dealing with a poison. Mm-hmm. So I would love to show you the studies, but none of us want to poison people on purpose. So, they're not there, and there's good reason. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. and that there are treatments. There are things that animals are being given every day to heal this. So seems like we should probably be doing that ourselves.
Love it. Well, thank you again so much. I'm excited for this information to get out there. I know Emily and I, we were so thrilled when we got the email saying that, yes, you'd be willing to join us with this. We were very excited for both fans, but if you have not checked out Dr. Crista's website or her book, please do so. It's just amazing. And like you've heard, she cares. She's genuine in that she really wants people to heal and to get the correct information.
Absolutely. And on my website, there are video blogs. You can go again to the footer, and there's just years and years of video blogs. They're little bite-sized videos. I pick one topic and just talk really quick for a minute. And so you can watch for, it probably would take a couple days to get through all of it. And also on YouTube, the same thing. So yeah, lots of free information out there. And I have lots of handouts and free resources because I know what it's like to be in your position. It's not good. So, but you can get out.